Okay, so for related text for Module C, you want to pick something that's going to match up with the ideas you've obviously already gotten so far with your paragraphs on your set text. So, and you want to make sure it's obviously not the same text type. So given, so if you're doing a film, obviously you don't want to be doing another film. You want to be picking something like a poem, a short story, a speech, that can always be good. A novel, you know, ideally a novel you've already read, because perhaps reading a novel right now is not the ideal thing you want to do, just because of the time it may take. But I'm a slow reader, I don't know if you are, but that's up to you. So I'm just going to suggest a related text now, which works really well, and you definitely don't need to use it, but it at least gives you an idea of the kind of text that would be good, and I'm going to give you an idea of like how you can actually integrate it with what you've already been writing. And like I said, it's just an example, so don't feel like you're bound by this one, but of course you can use it if you'd like, and I will make sure that, you know, I'm going to give everyone different suggestions so that, you know, we don't have too much double up going on. Okay, so this particular text is a picture book, and it is, it's also a satire. And basically what it's doing is it's satirizing the Falklands Island War, which was basically a war that happened between the Argentinians and the British. So I'd recommend just going and having a brief look at the history behind the war, but you don't need to know an awful lot of it, basically. You know, basically the British had actually colonized this island called the Falklands Island, and it's off the coast of Argentina. And Argentina basically went and reclaimed it. So basically they claimed that it was theirs, and then this basically, like, this instigated a war between the British and the Argentinians. So and what was really interesting about this is that it wasn't like the island had anything particularly special about it. It didn't have any resources, and you know, it's not even that special in any way, which is something Raymond Briggs very much highlights. However, you know, it ended up being kind of a matter of national sort of patriotism and national pride between both countries, and the political leaders wanting to actually assert their authority, versus actually there being any real purpose to this war. So that's something Raymond Briggs very much points out. Through the competing political perspectives he represents of this particular war and of these particular leaders. So in terms of so that's kind of giving you a sense of the motivations behind it. So the motivations in this text are very much represented to be, you know, personal, or like the glorification of the country. Okay. Okay, so just having a look at the first page. So you'll notice that there's very much like a storytelling kind of language being used, almost like childlike in a way. So it very much in alignment with the picture book format. Okay, which I'll comment on in a second about why he's actually framed it or used that particular kind of language. So, once upon a time, down in the bottom of the world, there was a sad little island. So if you have a look at the techniques, you know, down at the bottom of the world is, I would say, a hyperbole, right? So there's no such thing as being down at the bottom of the world, but it does very much diminish the importance of this particular island, enhanced, of course, by the next statement that it was sad and little. Okay, so sad would be personification. You know, and the image, the representation in the image is really good as well, because obviously you've got this, like, you know, really dull grey blue watercolors with, you know, the island being this really distant, insignificant, you know, like speck in the distance. Okay, so he's really, like, Raymond Briggs is really enhancing the insignificance of this island so as to emphasize how much this war really wasn't about the island, but rather about the power of these two particular countries, who, you know, chose to fight a war over this totally insignificant, like, island. Okay, so that is continued in the next page. So no one lived on the sad little island except for a few poor shepherds. These poor shepherds spent all their time counting their sheep and eating them. They had mutton for breakfast, mutton for dinner, and mutton for tea. So the simplicity of the island and the people on the island. Like, there is just absolutely nothing spectacular about this island. You have a few poor shepherds and they eat sheep, and that's it. Right? So you've got one building, sheep, and some men. Again, the greys, the rain, there's nothing too interesting about the shepherds. Like, very traditional kind of image there, pastoral image, which really, again, emphasizes the insignificance of this particular island that was gone to war over. So then, next door to the sad little island was a great big kingdom ruled over by a wicked foreign general. This wicked foreign general had wicked foreign mustachios. And although he had lots of gold on his hat, he was not real. He was made of tin pots. So, okay, so you get, like, it's a very obviously menacing image that you've got here. So note how you've got the Argentinian president across a double page spread, very dominating. So, like, it's kind of illustrated as a low angle. So he's not only dominating the page, he's dominating the viewer with the sheer size of this particular figure. Okay, so very much a powerful representation there. Also really violent. Okay, so you've got kind of violent and patriotic, because you've got the bloody sword in one hand and then the Argentinian flag in the other one, a missile for his cigar. Right. The use of the language there, so wicked foreign general, wicked foreign mustachios, so the repetition there, it's sort of very much writing it from a British perspective, and kind of criticizing that, like, the Argentinian president is the wicked or the evil one, although he really is not favorable about the British Prime Minister either, Margaret Thatcher, but we'll get to her. Okay, great. And yeah, you can kind of see, like, they start getting these images of sort of opulence as well, like, the gold buttons and the gold belt, and the gold in the hat. So, there's kind of, like, there's riches and money kind of linked with power as well there. Now, this tin pot foreign general wanted to be important. He wanted to do something historical so that his name would be printed in all the big history books. So I guess using that sort of childish language, I think really satirizes this as well, to illustrate these powerful leaders. So you've got Raymond Briggs's political motivation, which is to actually depict these figures as completely childish. And it gets even better as you go along, but he really starts depicting them as just children throwing a tantrum for nothing, So, he wanted to be important. So he's sort of really critiquing the fact that, the Argentinian president, it's about just creating attaining a sense of self-importance and, like, ego, if you will, and starting a war and having all these people die on account of his own, ego or self-interest. So there's a real, strong critique happening here in the representation. So one day he got all his soldiers and all his guns and he put them in boats, and then he sailed over the sea to the sad little island. There he stamped ashore and Bagsied the sad little island for his very own. Mia Bagsia el Ilandio. I bags the island, he roared. So that, I think, is like the best use of language to illustrate him as a child, right? So Bagsied is very much a child's thing to say. So again, you get this image of a powerful, really powerful leader as just being completely immature and selfish, basically. The poor shepherds did not like this at all, because the tin pot foreign general started bossing them about. Kind of see how the size proximity gives him that position of power. Now listen, far away over the sea there lived an old woman with lots of money and guns. Like the tin pot foreign general, she was not real either. She was made out of iron. Okay, cool. So quite a provocative image here. Like, so Margaret Thatcher doesn't have the best reputation in terms of who she was as a prime minister. She's very much remembered. She's called the Iron Lady. So she's quite tough and it's interesting. They kind of depict her here in this, you know, she's wearing these, what do you call them, like garters. And in the next one, you know, like there's these quite sexualized images of her, you know, breasts and like these garters and high heels and so on. But you can kind of see like she is depicted as very dominant. I probably won't talk too much about this, to be honest, apart from just looking at how she's represented in relation to wanting to like go to this war on account of national pride. But you can see the cannons are kind of like phallic images, and she's sort of controlling them. They're kind of bending to her knees or her legs. So, you know, you do get this kind of image of her, and she's not depicted positively at all. And then really like furthering that whole idea of a tantrum, like this is the best image for that kind of childish representation, with her like sitting with her like arms, fists raised in the air and her like knees in the air. So you know, and you've got like the red streaks coming out of her to signify her anger, and her like mouth's open, and like, you know, the cold gunshots coming out of her boobs is just like, you know, violence mixed with being a crazy woman and a child and all that. Anyway, but yeah, focus on the childish element. Okay, so when this old woman heard the Tin Pot Foreign General had Baggsy the Saddle Island, she flew into a rage. Great use of dialogue here. So, "It's mine," she screeched. "Mine, mine, mine. I Baggsied it ages ago. I Baggsied it first. Did. You know, so capitals, the repetition of mine shows really that's so selfish. And, you know, again, very much positioned or represented to be a child in the situation. So this is a really good link to Wag the Dog, because she says it's so exciting to have a real crisis. Completely ironic given they're going to war over a island that is completely insignificant. So what you can actually really parallel here is that there's been the creation of or the fabrication of, you know, a crisis in order to start a war that actually is really built to build national pride and you know, popularity for her as a leader, versus there actually really being any particular crisis or need to start a war. So that's a good link there in terms of irony. She poured out tons of treasure from her huge chest and bought lots and lots of boats. Then she got all her soldiers and guns, and she put them into boats and sailed them over the sea to the sad little island. She wanted to Baggsy the sad little island back again, you see. Bang, bang, bang went the guns of the Tin Pot Foreign General. Bang, bang, bang went the guns of the old Iron Woman. So this is like a really like comic book almost representation of war, and so far removed from reality, which now Raymond Briggs gives a competing political representation of this war, which is very like completely opposite to this whole like bang 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 kind of, you know, comic book theme. So it starts, the mood gets really somber now. So some men were shot. So you know, have this black and white charcoal image of you know, someone like a soldier being, you know, having been shot. Some men were drowned. Some men were burned alive. So you can see all of that animation from the previous language has been entirely removed, and you just get this really like simple kind of somber, you know, language being used, very short, and really just creates a sense of sadness and compassion for what's actually been lost and sacrificed. And that's the impact of these political motivations, which is that, you know, these men are like burned alive. That's like shocking, you know, shot, drowned over what? Nothing, you know, like over just a sense of patriotism or whatever. Some men were blown to bits. Some men were only half blown to bits and came home with parts of their body missing. And look at the kind of sheer amount of people that are actually have suffered through that. So, you know, and people lost limbs and had head injuries and arms broken, and, you know, so many of them. Hundreds of men were killed, and they were all real men, made of blood and flesh and blood. They were not made of tin or of iron. In the end, the old Iron Woman soldiers beat the Tin Pot Foreign General soldiers, and the Tin Pot Foreign General soldiers ran away. "I won," sang the old Iron Woman. "Rejoice! Mia Vili Ritorno, I will return," swore the Tin Pot Foreign General. You know, and she's like huge, you know, the whole I won coming out of her breast. She's kind of like pregnant with victory, like the eyes wide, the big colors, you know, again, which is very much juxtaposed to the use of black and white and charcoal of the poor men that died as a result. So the poor shepherds on Sad Island went on counting their sheep and eating them. They had mutton for breakfast, mutton for dinner, and mutton for tea. Some of them were killed in the battle, but no one was to blame. I don't know about that. Later on, a boat came back on the old Iron Woman's kingdom with a big iron box full of dead bodies. That's a pretty terrible image. Then the old Iron Woman gave all her soldiers a special medal. So now we get the patriotism in. Right, all the flags, the bayonets. After this, there was a grand parade to celebrate the great victory that everyone went to church to thank God. Very ironic. And, you know, calling it a great victory, completely ironic given that, again, it was over, nothing, an island that had no significance, but has been really embellished in order to glorify Britain, or whoever the victor happened to be, which in this case was Britain. But the soldiers with bits of their bodies missing were not invited to take part of the grand parade in case the sight of them spoiled the rejoicing. Some watched from a grandstand and others stayed at home with their memories and their medals. So that one there is really illustrating how the representation is constructed. So, you know, given that they're not allowed to actually attend, you know, it's sort of like, it's really misrepresenting what's actually gone on. So they're only letting like the soldiers that came back and were fully bodied and so on, not injured, actually take place as if nothing happened in terms of injuries or deaths. So that whole part of it is just, you know, hidden or concealed or like, you know, not talked about or depicted. Whereas, of course, Raymond Briggs is giving that competing image of illustrating that that's what actually went on. So that's sort of, you know, that kind of misrepresentation idea. And the families of the dead tended the graves. So again, like quite a sad image to finish off. Cool. So how about if you do want to go with that, feel free. You know, you should write 2 paragraphs, about 150 each, 150 words each, and do a similar split where you go like try and do the first half of it about the political motivations, you know, evident in this event personality situation, and then the impact of those. Okay, and then of course bring in the whole competing political motivations element in as well. But otherwise, that was just to give you an example of what kind of related text you could use, and feel free to pick your own as well.